All right. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're here today. This is Mission and Outreach in Today's Changing World, talking about what's next for congregations in light of COVID-19 and the changes to our church world. Ken?
Yeah, so my name is Ken Howard. I'm the executive director and principal consultant at FaithX. Joining me here are Mary Francis, one of our senior associate consultants who will be leading today's webinar, and Steve Matthews, another consultant of ours who will be joining us in small groups. So just a little bit about FaithX. Our mission statement is that we help congregations survive and thrive in turbulent times. We actually chose that about 3.5 years ago. We had no idea about how turbulent times would be, but that's what we're here for. And we do that by working with congregations and their judicatories to study their communities so that they can engage them more effectively and to see missional opportunities and challenges before they become fully present. I think that's enough about us.
All right. Thanks, Ken. So let's just dive in here. We are truly living in unprecedented times, and the church has responded in unprecedented ways with truly unprecedented speed. You all live in the church world, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. We didn't have to have meetings. We didn't have to have focus groups. We didn't have to have surveys. We responded to the moment, and we changed. Things that in a different time would have taken years or decades just happened, and it's good. But today, the main focus of congregations is online worship and online giving finances, right? So both of those things seem to take up a lot of focus. And what we're starting to lose track of is, actually I want to stay there for a second, is what else do we do? We can't just spend all of our time recording worship or recording pieces of worship, planning for streaming worship, and figuring out how to get people to give online. That we're called to so much more as the church. So how do we respond to that in these times? That's what we're going to talk about today. So we're learning a few things about how people are responding to these changes. We have this is some research from Barna, and you see here 32% of people have stopped attending worship since COVID. We can see that over here, boomers are most likely to stay at the same church. Gen Xers are most likely to switch churches or to even attend multiple church services. And millennials over here are the most likely to stop attending church altogether. And let's be honest, they were already the most underrepresented church group in the church to begin with. So there we have it, 1 in 3 have stopped attending worship. And so it's interesting to see what is it that people are looking to the church for during this time. And we see here that people mostly want prayer and support from their church. And keeping in mind that this is the Gen X group that would switch churches, if they aren't getting what they need from their church, it's never been easier for them to look elsewhere. They don't have to go through that high bar of driving to a new place, figuring out where to park, which door to go in, and faced with a room full of strangers. They can just observe online. So we think that people miss church for the community and connection, but over here on the right, these are the lowest responses. So it's not as important as we thought. Very interesting, if we look over here on the left side of the screen, we see that people who've stopped attending church report a lower level of emotional well-being. We don't always do what's best for us, right? So even though we know that we should eat less sugar or exercise more, we don't always do it. And by the same token, even though people feel better about themselves and their lives when they're involved in a faith community, they may not be doing it. So I'm wondering, how does this relate to your experience? Let's just take 3 or 4 comments. Does this sound right to you? Are you seeing these same sorts of things where you are? If you want to just unmute yourself and jump in, you can do that.
I'm seeing it in our context. Particularly, I'm being at, like, I actually just officiated a funeral today of somebody who I've never met in person, but they've been attending worship with us since April. So I am finding that that's what most people are seeming to want.
Okay, thanks.
Our congregation took a survey, and our choices were when we could go in to church, whether we wanted to have an outside service or whether we wanted to have it online. And most people wanted to have it online. And one of the things that they did miss the church and the people in the community, but that wasn't the highest. They just missed going into the nave and having communion, and that's what they missed the most.
Right.
So.
Thanks, Barbara. All right, one more comment.
We have a couple of comments in chat. St.
Okay.
Mark's New Canaan says yes, that certainly resonates with them. And Holly Hoffman says the data is helpful. What we think versus what people say their needs are actually during this time.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we aren't even sure about our own community, our own congregation, then it's even more important that we consider the data to figure out the larger community, the community that we're situated in. So here's a way that we can start to explore the data and see what it is that people need and what it is that they want, not just from church, but in general. So this is a, let me go back a second. This is what we call a neighborhood missional intelligence report. If you've been with us before, you might be familiar with this tool, but it's a way that we can gather over 40 different data points for one community. And here we're using an example from Springfield, Illinois. So it's semi-urban, downtown area, 15-minute drive time though. So what we see in this 15-minute drive time is that the population is, the 2 largest groups are boomers, so the folks who are least likely to change churches, and millennials, who are the most likely to not attend church at all. So, and then a little more than 25% of the population, here is the race piece, is non-white. So the dark green here is white, and then all of these are other non-white. Why is that significant? Well, because the non-white population is at higher risk during COVID right now. So something that we should be paying attention to in our communities. Who is at risk? So we have 26% of households over here on the left with no vehicle. So it's noteworthy, but it's downtown area. So I did ask the folks who are familiar with this address, is there good access to public transportation? And the answer was no. So if you needed to go to the grocery store, to the doctor, to what have you, it's not going to be easy for you to get around. And then zeroing in here in the middle, 17% of households live in poverty here, and 16% of them receive food stamps. Notice that both of these are higher than the national average. Households in poverty, the national average is 13%. Households receiving food stamps, 12% here. So it's particularly noteworthy because these are figures that are updated annually, unlike the next one we're going to talk about that's being updated monthly. So this has now been updated since COVID. So what do you think the impact here is? But then when we look at unemployment 13%, and that's being updated here on a monthly basis. So you've got higher unemployment in a situation that was already above the national average for poverty and food stamps. So this community has some people who are struggling right now. Then we could look at housing units. Over here on the left side of the screen, 33% of housing units are rent or occupied, which points to a more transient community in this example. But 11% are vacant. And when you have more than 10% vacancies in a neighborhood, it can lead to blight. So all these things start to come together to give us a picture of what's going on in the community. Notice here that 27% of the community lacks health insurance. And again, this would be a pre-COVID number. So we look over here, this information from Johns Hopkins, 40% of people have employer insurance. So if 13% are now unemployed, how does that impact people's health coverage? There's just so many layers for us to be considering when we're looking at the needs of our community and what is our mission to the community. Another important aspect, since so many of our congregations are worshiping online, is what is the access to the internet. Here I dropped a pin for the same address in Springfield, and you can see that almost 21% of households have no internet connection. And then just a few blocks away, over here, it's 40% have no internet connection. You know, I thought if any of you watched the convention last night when they did the roll call, the young woman who represented Montana talked about going home from college and trying to take her courses online, but she didn't have good access to internet, and it was really creating a challenge for her. We think of challenges to internet being something rural, but it's not. It's also can be a very serious problem in urban areas as well. Okay, so let's take a few moments here and think about what data would help you understand the needs of your community. You've seen an example of what we can pull, all the different threads we can pull out of some of the reports that we have available. So think about what's striking about that to you. What would you want to know about your community? And we're going to take a few minutes here and break up into pairs, just pairs. You'll have 5 minutes to talk with one another about what kind of data you wish you had to understand the needs of your community better. Understanding the needs of your community better helps you discern your mission. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Let's see. Can I do the groups, Ken? I think you have to do the groups, Ken.
Okay.
Have that access. So just send everybody out into pairs, okay?
Alrighty. Let's separate out people into groups. Okay. Got that room.
So
40% to 20 rooms. All right.
okie doke. See you.
Hello, Shar.
The suburb of Chicago.
Hi, Shar. This is Ken Howard.
So, all of that information would be really helpful for me to have for our community. I'd love to know about Wi-Fi access. I'd like to know about poverty levels, and I'd like to know age and income, if we were able to get all of that.
And most of that's available. Were you on any of the earlier FaithX webinars?
This is the first time.
Yeah, the last one was back in May, and they actually did grant us access for a limited period of time. I think we lost it the 1st of June or something. I haven't tried to log in since then, so I don't know if that's available to us.
There is a
So
free
they
version.
have all that by zip code, or?
It's yeah, they had what she was demonstrating right towards the end of it. That's what was available.
And so have you made use of that in your own congregation?
No, we hadn't done anything with that. It would be great. It would be great to do, but we were trying to survive at the time. We got to get ourselves online and did a lot of other functions running. We have a relatively small church. How about you?
Ours is small. Just last, our diocesan convention is in November. And so just last November, we moved from mission to parish status. I'm glad it happened then, because we're not sure we can have a convention this year.
Right.
Yeah. But I've been, and I'm the rector, I'm very pleased that we seem to have stayed connected. And it's been a lot of good work, a lot of emailing and online. We do an online service on Sunday mornings, and on Wednesday evening we do evening prayer.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. And then we do what I call a coffee hour. It's a Thursday evenings, but we do it by Zoom so people can see each other and check in.
I like that. That's what we're discussing right now. So we've been doing Sunday morning. Our last service was March 15th, and then Sunday morning on the 22nd of March, we were online. And we were only online for several months. Last Sunday was our 4th regathering Sunday. We're getting limited people there, 20 people that are in our sanctuary, give or take, but half of them are there because they are taking temperatures, seating people, running the stream, that kind of thing. So, have you gone back to church yet?
No, we were a week ago, Tuesday, we were given permission to start gathering outside on Sunday. So we weren't ready this past Sunday. And a week from So I guess maybe Sunday the 30th, we will have an outdoor service. I was over at the property today, kind of looking with, we are lucky enough to have a curate who just came July 1st, and it's, because the diocese got a grant. We're not big enough to have a curate, but he and I were figuring out where in our parking lot we could situate people, and we will have our first outdoor service at 8 o'clock on Sunday, August 30th. We'll continue to do the online. And online, you know, for us, I guess the 15th was the first Sunday we didn't have. And so we've been online, but it's much better now.
Yeah.
So it was really pretty bad to begin with, but but it's better.
So what we've been looking at recently, we just had our council meeting last week. We need more ways to connect. I mean, other than having meetings, and Char's our vice council president. I'm also on council, just as financial secretary. But so we have 2 or 3 Zoom meetings like this a week for different things. But in terms of connecting to our congregation, Sunday morning has been it. So I'm really interested that you're doing a prayer service and that you're also doing a coffee hour. That's what we talked about. We need more ways to engage our congregation. Online is fine, or come to the parking lot and we'll social distance or what. But all the pressure is on Sunday morning right now. That's the only place where everybody gets engaged.
We have a care team that we started up, and we take the church directory and split it up between
Yeah.
people who signed up to be on the care team, and then we call the people on our individual lists. And I think that's been okay, but it doesn't make up for it, you know.
Yeah.
What is your prayer service like? What do you do with that?
Oh, that's evening prayer.
Yeah.
You know, so it's out of the prayer book.
Oh, okay.
And then people, because we're on Zoom, for the intercessions, they can speak. That service is both Zoom and Facebook, and so they can put it in the chat box. But either way, we pray together. But it's the reading, the psalm.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, I didn't know if
Yeah.
we just open people, ask for prayers, necessary
Well,
prayers or something like that.
Our vestry has asked for that for outdoors on Wednesdays, so we might get to that.
Great.
We're about to leave, but it's been good to see you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you in the other room. Bye-bye.
Okay, welcome back. So let's just have a few people share. We'll do 3 or 4 and then move on to the next piece. So what did you hear? What did you share? What's the data that's going to help you understand what your community is needing right now?
My name's Roxanne, and I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. And what Peggy and I talked about was we would like to know how many people out there have access to computers, because both of us come from pretty fair-sized cities. So you wouldn't think that we would be without access, and yet we are. I mean, many, many people don't have computers. And even if we could give them a computer, some of them don't have the skills to know how to operate a computer. So they would never know how to get on Zoom, for instance.
Right.
Those were our issues. And then Peggy mentioned there are those people that pride themselves on never using computers and never will use computers. And so, like, what do you do with that group? So that was our issue.
All right. Thanks, Roxanne. It's very, very real issue right now. Other thoughts?
Well, my partner and I were both on Hilton Head and Cape Cod. So we're both in locations where people tend to retire and locations where it's really a tourist industry. And that's how we make our money. And so the idea of how many workers can't come, not knowing how many people are here at the moment in the summers and can't get in, and not knowing how many people now need to be fed, because those sorts of people tend to be in a subsistence sort of situation. And then the second thing is our school children falling through the cracks who are no longer being fed during the summer, when during the school year, they are receiving 2 meals a day.
Yes. Yeah, I know many school districts have still been providing food over the summer, but not all.
Right.
And during the school year, children who are living in poverty often are able to participate in backpack programs where they get sent home on the weekend with a backpack full of food. But again, if they're not at the school to receive that backpack, are those sorts of things still continuing? It's a very real problem. All right, one more thought and then we'll move on.
This is Lynn. I'd be interested in some more
Lynn,
generational.
it looks like you're muted maybe.
Am I? I thought I got out of mute. No? I think if I'm muted, you've
Can't
muted
hear
me?
you.
Okay, sorry.
I can hear you.
Can
Lynn.
you? Oh, anyway, all
I
I'm saying
heard you for a
is,
second and then you went away.
okay, well, others are saying that they can hear
Ken,
me,
can you
so.
check, is she muted or unmuted?
No, she's not muted.
We can hear it just fine.
Okay,
Oh,
well, I'm
no,
going to keep
not
going
hearing
then.
anybody.
Yeah, keep going and one of us will answer.
Okay, all right, and I'm just, I'm Cape Elizabeth in Maine, and I'd be interested in generational statistics. Because the way the various generations respond to any number of things, find generational statistics helpful, and you were doing some of that early on, so I'd be interested in that. That's it.
I can't talk right now.
That's it for me.
Anyone else have comments?
I lost my sound, Ken.
I can hear you. Do you have your
I can't hear any of you.
do you have your speaker off?
You could sign off and sign back in. That might help reset you.
Because I'm just staying on.
Are you getting back to me? Because I was asking if you want me
Okay.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm just trying to do research for our church. Just dipping my fingers in all these little pots. Bo wants us to look at the stuff that Sarah sent. So I'm gonna let you do that one, because I am on this one.
All right, are we ready to move on? Sorry about that. I lost my sound for a
You don't
moment.
have to do it now. I'm just saying.
Sherry Bellamy, I think you're unmuted. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just don't want you to divulge any church secrets.
Thank you. I certainly was.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. So looking forward, the paradigm for the church today is often come follow Jesus at church on Sunday at 11 o'clock. Yet in Jesus' ministry on earth, church was not something that happened at a particular time on a particular day. Instead, church was a community of people who cared about the gospel and cared about the good news and took the good news with them wherever they went. This is from Nona Jones, who is, maybe you knew, I didn't, that Facebook has a faith-based director who interacts with congregations. She's also a pastor of a church in Florida, so she knows what it is that she's talking about. So I think it's true. I think we are being called into new paradigms, less centered in our buildings and more grounded in the world. So what does that end up looking like for us? How are we helping people nurture their faith? I'm hearing people talk about community, but beyond community, I think this is about discipleship. If we aren't helping people grow deeper in their faith, particularly in this time of crisis, then I think that we are missing a very important piece of the puzzle, a very important piece of what we're being called to do. You know, I love this quote by Frederick Buechner. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. So I'm kind of wondering, how has the world's great hunger changed in your community due to the pandemic? Like, you may have thought you knew your community. You may have thought you knew what the needs were in January and February, maybe even in early March. But now here we are, 5 months in, 5 months, right, into this. Who knows what day it is? Time has lost all meaning. But how do we know? So I think this is a big way that we know. And I know some of you were asking, where does this data come from? There's a lot of different sources. We work with a company called Data Story that helps us connect to this information that is kind of like a big data clearinghouse. Is called Esri. So there's census data, but there's other sources of data. And that important thing is that Data Story only uses data that can be updated at least annually. So we know that none of this is really old data, not like 10-year-old census data. And some of it is getting updated even more often than that. So based on what we learned from that example in Springfield, some of the folks that I've been talking to have come up with some of these ideas. You know, offering homeschool supplies. What are kids missing out on? Not food, of course, but also what about school supplies? The things that they might have gotten at school, pens, paper, things like that. You can support a local business by doing some, you know, random acts of kindness, buying coffee for the first 10 people who come to the coffee shop in a day or in a week, however you decide to do that. But you could also include in that an invitation to your online coffee hour. Don't expect hordes of people to show up the first time you do it, but over time, you'll start to have more of an audience for that. Helping stock the local food pantry. Lots of people are doing drive up food donations and drive up ways to give away food. So with the high rate of unemployment, helping people in their job search, which is certainly something that could be done via Zoom, delivering groceries, backpack meals for kids, rent or eviction assistance, and creating internet hotspots. So if you're willing to allow people to be near your building, you could perhaps share your hotspot. I think even internet advocacy is a very important piece right now to help our government or our people have more access to internet. So one is broadband access for all, and the other is working directly with internet companies to help them make internet more accessible and more affordable. So just a couple of ideas there. And I love this little drive-through coffee shop. It's clearly not a chain, so supporting local is really important. So one of the synods that I work with did a workshop recently on faith formation in the first third of life, and they called it Catch Faith, Not Coronavirus. This article from the New York Times It talks about how families are finding God and faith outside of a church building and creating these kinds of rituals that they may have relied on the church to do before. This darling little girl, she's so adorable, isn't she? Is praying in the church that her dad built in the backyard. So it's a lot of like sticks and logs and not something that's going to withstand a storm. But he couldn't fathom the idea of Easter without being in a church. So they created a worship space in their backyard. And clearly she got it, because she knelt down and started to pray. In my own family, my son and daughter-in-law participate in online worship with their church. And when the church announced that they were going to have Holy Communion, they got out some communion ware. My daughter-in-law had made communion ware for their wedding in a pottery class. They still had it. They got it out. They baked bread, so they engaged the children in making the bread. They set the table, they laid a cloth, they brought the communion ware out, they poured the wine, and the kids were all a part of that in a way that they never would have been before. And it's become a very, very important part of their faith formation to be participating in that. So I think we can't lose sight of the fact that we have new opportunities and people are responding in different ways to that. So that's just one of them. So I think that this is a time for us to be thinking about small groups or house churches, and that it may be just what we need right now. So first, let me say that whatever I say after this is based on the idea that in small groups of people, people would either be tested before they gather, or they're gathering with social distancing and masks, or they're gathering online. So there's flexibility and ways to do this that don't have to put people at risk. But I'm gonna not jump too far ahead of myself, but I don't want people to shut down on this because of fear. So there's some different ways to think about it. So I think we want to think about it because small groups or house churches, they can be flexible and nimble. They can be in person in safe ways, or they can be online, or they can be both, or they can shift back and forth from one to the other very quickly, very easily. Right now, this time of year, they can be outdoors. Even in the winter, they could be, depending on how you want to do it. I know there's a church in Utah that says they're going to be teaching their children outdoors year-round. So it depends on how you feel about that, fire and some snow boots. But there's just, I think, a new openness to this idea. I used to work at the church-wide offices of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And every once in a while, there would be someone who had this idea to start a house church. And it was so hard because starting from scratch is very, very difficult. But when you're starting from a congregation and dispersing people out into groups, you have the infrastructure in place to start with that you don't have to start over. So you have resources and you have leadership, and now it's just arranging people differently. And people want to get together. Even though community wasn't the highest piece on in some of those statistics, it's still part of it. So people want to gather, but they're just not comfortable gathering in large groups. And small groups can be cover a wide variety of needs. So evangelism can be part of it. That's the idea of having some empty seats. I actually know one church right now that started small groups since COVID, and they would have a host, one other family, and then that's it from the church. everyone else who became a part of that group was from outside of the congregation by invitation. So by having space in the groups to add people, not filling them up to 8 or 10 right off the bat, is a great opportunity for evangelism. But it can be service, there can be social justice, it can be Bible study, prayer, it can be worship. They can worship together, they can participate in online worship together, different ways of doing it. And I'll share some about that. So different congregations that I know are organizing this differently. Some of them are doing family groups and friends. Some of them are doing it geographically by neighborhood, by ministry or affinity, things that people are involved in, or just randomly assigning people to small groups, which is probably the least popular one of them, or inviting folks. So this Emmanuel Lutheran Church is in northwestern Minnesota, and they have started doing what they're calling home church, and reminding folks that this is an idea that is biblically grounded, centuries old, and they're inviting people to have 2 to 4 households together to have gatherings that feel safe for people. So it's an old idea being made new. But it also says there's individuality here. Every group, here variety is the key, every group will be different, and every group will be grounded in the values and the mission and vision of the congregation, of the church. So they're not off totally doing their own thing, but they will gather for prayer, for confession and forgiveness, to share communion. And I know not all polities will allow for that, but it doesn't mean you can't gather for prayer and scripture, Bible study, etc. And then in their idea, you're gathering at home on a regular basis, or in a park, or on someone's patio, what have you. But then every 4 to 6 weeks, your home church group gets to come to the sanctuary, have worship there, have communion, and then receive the elements to take back to your home church for the next several gatherings, so that it comes straight out of that. And then they've still provided for people who don't want to participate in a home church. So they said, you know, if you're not comfortable with that, we're still going to figure out how to bring you communion every 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll work that out. But they also are providing training. So anyone who's having a home church will designate a leader, and then the pastors will help resource the leaders so that they feel comfortable and they have everything that they need in order to get things started, in order to lead those. So I'm wondering what you need to get started. Let's see, what time do we have? We've got a few minutes. Ken, can you put us back in groups again, just randomly, pairs, and think about what would it look like in your church if you were to introduce this concept? What would you need to get things started? And we'll just take 5 minutes, then we'll come back together and we'll have time for questions, answers, and a little more large group conversation. Okay.
1 second.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Shar? Can you hear me? Hello.
I hear
Okay.
you. Are you our moderator?
No, I'm just part of this group. Whatever.
Hi.
It's twosome.
Yeah, there should be a two-person group.
Exactly. Thank you, Ken.
but people actually have to join the group that they're in.
Okay.
And so you should have a little pop-up that says join group number, whatever it is.
Mine says, please wait to be assigned.
Which are you? What's your name again?
Dr. Jen Dorsey.
Dr. Jen Dorsey.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Okay. Assign to, let's see, assign you to room 2. And assign you also to room 2.
Okay. Joint breakout room.
All right.
right. Are we back?
We are back.
We're back. Okay, great. All right. So, one of the things that came up in the group that I was with, we talked about that folks are still, even in a small group of 8 or 10 people, could be uncomfortable gathering. And so I want to just remind you that small groups or house churches can be online. And the benefit of doing that is that folks can feel invisible watching your worship on Facebook Live or streamed or pre-recorded, not necessarily feel connected. And when you offer something in a smaller group setting, even if it's online, there's more opportunity for engagement. An example of this, I have a very dear friend who is a retired clergy person. And so in her retirement, she joined a new church, and here they are meeting on Zoom and having Zoom coffee hour. And she can't find her footing in that group. She can't find a way in because everybody knows everybody. And where there's 30 people on a Zoom coffee hour, how is it not just watching a few people have a conversation? But if you can break that up into smaller groups, even if you're just doing small groups and coffee hour, it's a good way to help people stay connected. So I'm going to open up for questions or comments about the conversations that you just had.
Hi, this is Greg Jacobs. I live in Durham, North Carolina. I'm also retired clergy, but have blessedly found myself a part of a congregation that is really on this edge of discovery. Because it's an older congregation, there's been a real challenge around online worship, etc. But one of our transitional deacons came up with this idea of an agape meal. So in place of the virtual cocktail party we have every week that lasts about an hour, a couple of us volunteered to transport loaves of bread to various people in the congregation, and we had an agape meal online, and about 30 people showed up, and it was a way to connect to the communion that a lot of people craved, but at the same time had that feeling of being in a small group. And so, we're now talking about, what kind of other things might we do similar to that give people a sense of community, but recognize, the restrictions that we have around online worship.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Greg. That's beautiful. That's a great idea. Yeah, I know that not all traditions are doing communion at home, so I want to be sensitive to that, but I do think there's a lot of room for that kind of creativity. I know a lot of bishops across different denominations who are looking at how to get their congregations involved in small groups or house churches. All right.
So I'm speaking as an Episcopal priest who would need permission from the bishop, as well as with a high Eucharistic theology, as well as a person who recognizes my privilege that I do get to have Eucharist every week because I'm there. So that's the caveat that I'm putting out there. I think for me, I would love to have people gather, just making it clear. And again, this is Episcopal theology, so other people can have different thing, that it is an agape meal versus the sacrament.
Sure.
But I also think, and I'm working on this, again, I'm a high Eucharistic theology. I went to Presbyterian seminary and they think I can make anything into Eucharistic theology. But I also think that our God is a God is dynamic and participatory, and wants us to think outside the box during this pandemic. and to not have people feel isolated and alone and without. And if, you know, we may think we're having to do cartwheels around our theology, but I just believe God's bigger than that, and God can handle the rest. But
Amen.
if anybody knows my bishop, please don't tell him I said that. Actually, he already knows.
Well, what happens in the webinar stays in the webinar.
I will offer this.
Except you're recording it. No, it's okay. I've had these conversations with him, so it's fine.
I'm sure you
Like
know.
Mission Impossible, the recording will go up in smoke after about 10 minutes after you get it. Not really. I would just offer one thing about that. There's been some very outside the box thinking about how within the rubrics, even in the Episcopal Church, that one can do the Eucharist at a distance with the priest in the church and the people at home. So it's doable. It just depends on how comfortable you want to be with it.
Right. It's your understanding of grace and how the Spirit works. Yeah. And you know, I'll take this whole concept one step further to say, consider this. What if you had 3 or 4 or 5 congregations that gathered together for a network of house churches, so that on any given Sunday each week, only one of the clergy people had to spend this inordinate amount of time preparing for online worship, and the rest could help resource the house churches with Bible study materials, do more pastoral care, do more outreach, like all those things that are getting kind of this short shrift because of how much time technology takes. So, food for thought. Food for thought. Steve, let me turn this over to you now to kind of close us out.
So we hope we've given you a taste for what is available out there in terms of the data. And so we have, this is a wide variety, and we could go into these individually, but basically what I want to say is we have a variety of resources available to you to be able to find something specific that you're looking for, or a general overview, or if you're looking to do a deep dive and you really want to use data for strategic planning and how you go forward, we have those resources. And so the best way, and it's a little bit faded on here because it's right on the horizon of the earth, is to call us, or to look at faithx.net. That's our website, and to look at the resources there, or to contact us. But we have something for lots of different price points. So our resources are affordable and available. And if you don't see something there that you want, let us know and we'll do our best to get it.
Yep. So we'll hang out here for a few more moments. We thank you so much for attending today. We have other webinars coming up. We're doing these once a month. So if this caught your interest, we have lots of ways to talk about what's going on in the church today and how you can be responsive to it. So we hope that you'll join us in September and October, and we'll hang out here for a few minutes for people who have other questions or want to chat, but we want to honor your time. Thanks so much for coming today.